your university. Hello, everybody. Hi. Okay, so today we have a guest speaker. This is Dr. Gillum from CBU. It's also where I'm an alumni from. I graduated from the graduate program, so in my opinion, it's the best school you guys can ever grab. Dr. Gillum is very knowledgeable. His expertise is in environmental exercise physiology. So if you are currently in physiology, you got some equipment. I'm kidding. But yeah, if you guys have questions, feel free to ask him. He's a wonderful human being, super down to earth. It's a pleasure to have him here. So thank you.
Trevor, thanks. Well, good morning. It's good to be with you guys. As you're Trevor Gillum. I've been in CBU 16 years, so I'm not from the area. I tell my students that I'm from rural Oklahoma. So geographically, I'm from a long way from California, and culturally even further, right? There's not a lot that rural Oklahoma has to do with Southern California, but it's a great place. Not the SoCal part. I'm learning to like that, but CBU, it's a fantastic place. And really, I know Cal State really well. It almost feels like an extended family. I've had Dr. Haddock, his daughter was in one of my research studies years ago, probably a decade or more ago. Dr. Ng has sat on a thesis committee for one of my grad students, who's now gone on to bigger and better things than I could ever imagine. Dr. Dabbs and I have sat on boards together. Dr. Bodell was one of my very first graduate students, if you've had him before. And when I first landed at Cal Baptist, I think in like 2010, 2011, he was a master's student. And from there, he went to UNLV for PhD. And so it's fun bumping into him at conferences because it's kind of the full loop, right? Having him as a student and then writing him letters for PhD work and then now seeing him do his thing here. So all that to say, when I see applications for our grad program from Cal State San Bernardino, it always warms my heart. And really, students are well trained. You guys have really good faculty, and I have many of maybe your colleagues in my program right now, and they're doing quite well. They always do. So all that to say, it's good to be here. I've been on campus a few times, and it always kind of feels like a little bit like home. But I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking to you about our grad program. I'm happy to engage with you about this in any way that you can. So feel free to jump in with questions. The hope is just that this is informative and maybe kind of sets the table for graduate work. Right, this field is. There's about a million things you can do with this field. And I think part of that is encouraging. At least my hope to you is it encourages you, but I can also understand how it might be a little bit daunting. And so maybe that's sort of an underlying theme of this is you might be sitting there trying to think, well, what am I going to do with this degree? What am I going to tell my mom and dad that what I'm going to do with this degree? So one of the things that you can do is once you complete your undergraduate studies here, then you can jump into CBU. So let me just tell you sort of wide into the funnel. Sorry, let me get all the animation up at the time. Wide into the funnel, and then we'll slowly get a little bit more narrowed and a little bit more specific. But CBU, these are the four sort of guiding elements of our university, not our program, but our overall institution. We call them the core four. And so you'll hear a lot about this, both from an application standpoint and the admissions process. As you're oriented in the university into the discipline, and then Lord willing, as you walk across the stage with commencement, right? These things are prominent. So just to describe CBU maybe in a little bit more detail, here are kind of some big blocks of the institution that we hope all students walk out the door with a better understanding of being academically prepared. Clearly, that's where I come in and other faculty. We're going to make sure you know the discipline in a really rigorous way, right? You'll understand it at the graduate level. Biblically rooted, right? We believe that all truth is God's truth, right? Francis Schaeffer said that. And so to really understand truth, you have to understand the source of truth. And so you'll get the discipline through a biblical perspective. Globally minded, there's just this week an email scrolled across my inbox about one of our faculty leading a group of students to Northeast China to do cardiac rehab. And so if that's something that is interesting to you, and we have those types of opportunities. And again, in a hyper globalized market, these things are really helpful. They're also helpful for students who want to pursue more work beyond CBU. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but many of our students from our graduate program move on to things like DPT or PA or med school. So as I write those letters of recommendation, invariably there's a piece of that application that asks about the applicant's cultural perspectives, what they've done internationally. And so again, it's something easy for me to write when they've done these types of trips. And so again, this summer, some of our grad students are going to China to work at a hospital with, again, a cardiac rehab. And then very so much of that equipped to serve. Obviously, we can serve internationally, but we can also serve right down the street. And so again, we want you to view this discipline not only as a way to better yourself, to provide for yourself and a family, but also then to be a good neighbor. All right, so a little bit more narrow. Let's take a step further. Just some superlatives about CBU. You may have seen these as I was driving through SoCal, in the past couple of years, there was big billboards that said the CBU is quite proud of this. So let me just echo that. This is from the Wall Street Journal about a year and a half ago. This came out. So #1 in the country in career preparedness, #2 in the country for best experience. And really, I just highlight this. You guys know this well from Cal State. Your program does a nice job of this. But students really are the heart of CBU, right? I'm at a place like CBU, I'm at CBU, all right, Cal State does so much of that, really because we enjoy students. The truth with higher ed is it can look very different. Let me just say that. It can look very different based upon the places that you are. But CBU and Cal State to a similar degree are unique in that we really care about you guys. We're here because we want to engage with you, interact with you, and train you, not just necessarily conduct some really high level research. Maybe keep a handful of office hours and just sort of go on the speaking circuit, right? We can do that, but the real purpose of what we do is to try to engage with you guys and to help you achieve really the way in which God designed you. All right, so with that sort of as introduction, let's move then into the program. And so this is actually the first time I've given this lecture because our program has just changed. It's actually in the process of changing. So you're interested, I know you're not really interested, but you're hearing this topic. Hopefully you're interested, had a good time. And so we used to be a Master's of Science in Kinesiology. And then from that, you could have a concentration in different areas. So Cameron was one of our students a good number of years ago. He has a degree in kinesiology and his concentration was exercise science, right? And that's the program that I oversaw. And so what we've done now is we've removed that Master's of Science in Kinesiology. And instead, we pulled out the exercise science piece, and now it is its own graduate degree. So starting in August, this was just approved a few months ago. So starting in August, we will now have a Master of Science in Exercise Physiology. And so there's a few reasons why we've done that. Let me advance the slide, and I'll show you why. The two biggest reasons we've done this. Oh goodness, where's my? Did I take it out? There we go. The two biggest reasons we've done this are these guys. No doubt you are familiar with these entities. So NSCA is the National Strength and Conditioning Association. Obviously ACSM is the American College of Sports Medicine. Both of these entities have come out in recent years saying that unless your program is accredited, then your students who come from your program are not eligible to sit for the certification exams. You probably have heard something like this in some of your classes. And so this was a problem for us, right? Because it's challenging then for me as program director to view an application, to sit in an interview room with the applicant and tell them all the great things they can do with this degree if about 75% of those things are inaccessible to them because our program is not accredited, right? So that's the problem. So again, the reason why we created a Master's of Science in Exercise Physiology is because we are now in the process of seeking accreditation, both from the NSCA and then in the ACSM. So we currently are, you can see there, an ERP, an Education Recognition Program. Somebody said NSCA has viewed our program and they say, yeah, it looks good, it's a stamp of approval, so we get to advertise with them. Our students get a bit of a discount for the CSCS and some of the other certifications they offer. But we need to take that a step further, and so we're walking into the accreditation process through both of these. And so, for example, if you want to be a certified strength and conditioning specialist, right, then the NSCA has that certification. Unless you graduate from an accredited program, you won't be eligible to sit for that. Now, we've got about 10 years, and then we'll see even what happens 10 years from now, right? In 2035, are they really going to hold our feet to the fire? They might. But either way, I think it's a good point in our program for a little bit of enhancement and refinement. And so we've done some things for a good long while, but now let's begin to enhance and refine to then better meet the needs of kind of where our students are going into the workforce. So with that, let me back up. Let me go here, sorry. And so this is then just a smattering of classes. You don't need to take them in too much detail. What I want you to see is just the building blocks. I want you to see there's a given number of core classes that just basically serve as the foundation for the discipline. And then from that, you can see we have what we call a clinical cognate. That's going to satisfy the criteria for ACSM. In order for our students to sit it's called a clinical exercise physiology certification. So to work in cardiac rehab or pulmonary rehab and those types of areas, inpatient and outpatient centers, then again, those are the coursework, and that is the coursework that's required for them not only to be prepared for the exam, but for ACSM to say, yeah, your program actually meets the criteria. And you see the same thing at the bottom. We have what's called a sport performance cognate. And so again, these are 10 units of then strength and conditioning classes, biomechanics classes, nutrition classes, et cetera, to then satisfy not only NSCA's criteria, but then also to prepare students for the CSCS. Sorry, did I do that? So we see then, again, the different units. So if you do some quick math, you can see that it's basically 31 units if you complete our program with a comprehensive exam. If you choose to pursue a master's thesis, then that makes it 33 units. So you can complete our program. We've designed it for it to be done in a calendar year if you're so inclined. That was one of the feedback pieces that we got from both admissions and also from students, is that they'd like to see our program be a little bit more expeditious. And so that again, if students need to, they can start in the fall. And then, so they start in September, and then they would complete our program in late August. So there's your calendar year. For students who want to take a more of a traditional approach, this can be done in the kind of the classic 2 academic year model, right? It's really only about 18 months by the calendar. It would be a fall, spring, summer semester, then fall, spring. So about 18 months, but that would be 2 academic years. So either one would be available to students. But again, it's 30 units, well, 30-ish units, depending on how you want to complete the program. One of the things that we've tried to really enhance and refine as well is our internship capabilities. And so this is again part and parcel within the accreditation process, right? We have to show both the NSCA and the ACSM that we have places to send our students. And these places are qualified according to NSCA and qualified according to ACSM. So you can see the list of things there. I won't go through them. But again, know that we have an entire office on the College of Health Science that is specifically designed for students to then maximize their internship experience. So you don't need to find these sites. We have sites in place and we have agreements in place. And so you register for the class and then you're placed based upon your interest and away you go. So we've tried to make that as seamlessly as we can. And truth be told, when students find work in this area quickly after graduation, we typically can trace it back to the internship experience. So we really view this class, I would say it's probably one of the most important, maybe not one that you're going to learn the most, but when it comes to actually getting a job and moving into the workforce, the old adage is true, it's all in who you know. And so to get good contacts, to get good experience, again, this sort of bridges the gap between the hallowed walls of CBU and then the real world, so to speak. And so again, we take this internship very, very seriously. And that's called our field work is the word we use for it. So if you see the field experience or field work class, that's all that means. Now, again, that's one specific degree. That's the one I oversee. So that's the one that I spend the most time talking about. But the other side of the coin is we have a similar degree. If you're not interested in physiology and strength and conditioning or cardiac rehab or PhD work, then this is another pursuit that might interest you. So this is a newly launched Master's of Science, Athletics Administration and Coaching. And so this, we had a sport management degree, if you've heard that before. This is sort of a rebranded, refurbished sports management degree. So this one, as you can see across the top, it's a 12-month program similar to the exercise physiology, but this one is fully online. And so we have a different program director that oversees this specific content area. And so I can't speak with much authority on this. I'm happy to engage with questions as best I am able, but I can send you to the right people. But long story short, these are folks that are interested in what I tell people is the business side of sport. And so if you're interested in NCAA compliance, if you're interested in being an athletic director, if you're interested in front office, this is again an area of interest for a lot of students. So you can see the focus on the economics of sports. So things that are well beyond my level of training and understanding. But again, this degree will launch in August and again can be completed fully online in 12 months. The other degree that I mentioned, the exercise physiology degree, is then face-to-face. Here are the specific courses. Again, it's the same number of units. It's 30 units. And again, not that you have to see them and understand them all, but just to give you an idea, would this even interest me? What is this about? You can just kind of get an idea as you view the specific classes and how when they're offered and in what format. All right, I'm going to save a little bit of this. Well, I'll go ahead and do it right now. So this is probably maybe one of the most important questions. Is what can I do with the degree? So let me first talk with the folks on the left. Again, this is the area that I oversee, so I can speak with a bit more clarity here. How I encourage students to think through this discipline. One is I'll show you a link to our website soon, which has our alumni tab. And so that's what I was thinking in my mind. So you can jump on the alumni tab and I'll talk about that in a minute. But basically we have about 3 different groups of where our students land. And so to think, well, should I pursue, the cost and the time and the energy of a graduate degree? One of the ways to answer that is then to see, well, what do people even do with the degree? So from an exercise physiology perspective, the first group of students, about 30% or so, fall into the camp of what I just call more school. Right? So this is the idea that they're at CBU with a graduate degree in exercise physiology, but it's not the last degree they're going to get. So they're going to take this and they're going to springboard into DPT. Right? That's a very popular one. Maybe they tried at the undergraduate level and didn't get in. And so then they're going to retool, they're going to get a degree, going to get more experience, and then they'll try again. So that's a handful of students. Occupational therapy is another one. Physician's assistant is beginning to get more and more play in our field. And we have students move on into med school. So you kind of get the idea. OT, right? AT, DPT, PA, med school, just again, more school, right? PhD work is in there too, just where they're moving from us onto something else. So that's about a third or so of our students. Another group, this probably represents the biggest from a percentage perspective, is in our clinical exercise physiology. So when I first started, again, I landed here 16 years ago. I've been hired in higher ed almost 20 years. There wasn't a lot of jobs in cardiac rehab for exercise physiologists, which was always puzzling, right? Because, you guys know exercise far better than a nurse knows exercise. You know the hemodynamic response to exercise. You know the way exercise completely remodels the heart, right? You and I could talk about how really this is the most important thing for people to do fresh off of some sort of cardiovascular event. But but what people used to say was clinicians who oversee these cardiac rehab departments, they like to hire clinicians. So they don't really know what an exercise physiologist is, but they really know what a nurse is. And so usually nurses would oversee that. Well, that has shifted completely in my 15 plus years here in Southern California, where the lion's share of our students who walk right out of our program and right into the workforce is cardiac rehab. I have people calling me all the time about, I need to hire some cardiac rehab folks. Do you have some students who you can recommend? We have folks at Loma Linda, we have folks at Kaiser. They're all over the place. And again, this wasn't necessarily the case 10 or 15 years ago. And so all that to say, a clinical side is a great avenue for many of our students, whether it be pulmonary rehab or cardiac rehab. Those are the two big ones. But that's, again, a healthy interest of our students. So again, first bucket, sort of more school. Second bucket is clinical. And then the third is strength and conditioning. So we've got a handful of students then who are all over the country working in various strength and conditioning. These are mostly at universities. So we've got actually two guys at Stanford right now. We've got some guys back east at Valdosta State. We've got another one in Milwaukee, University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. A couple guys in Oregon. So again, you get the idea that they're just sort of all over the place. Again, working in strength and conditioning, primarily with the Division I athlete. Now that gets a little bit, those waters get a little bit muddied because in Southern California with high socioeconomic status, then a lot of our guys will move into sort of what I just call the boutique fitness trend. Like, it's not a world I live in. I don't know exactly what they do, but I know there's a lot of money to be made in that. And so again, if you're entrepreneurial in spirit, then a lot of folks will kind of move into that area. But again, that's just to think sort of broad level, what can I do? I would encourage you to think through maybe those three camps. If one of those three camps interests you, then our program might be a good fit for you. There are many other exercise science grad programs in the area, and they'll all have somewhat strengths and weaknesses, but one of the ways to discern strength and weaknesses is to find an alumni list. Where do students from their program, where have they landed? And that really gives you a good inclination into what types of things you'll not only learn about, but what connections faculty have and where the students ultimately find work. So that's, again, left. On the right side, I won't spend much time here because the truth be told, I don't really know a lot about this. But here's your sport management, as I mentioned, collegiate athletic departments, sports marketing, et cetera, et cetera. If this is something that interests you, again, I'm happy to connect you with the folks at CBU who oversee this area. It's in a little bit of a transition like our program is as well, but I honestly think it's a good time. I think the transition will be helpful, will be meaningful, and then impactful for students. I think they're good changes, I guess is what I'm trying to say. How about this? You might be thinking, all right, well, how do I get into your program? So that QR code will go to our grad application. I don't know where you are in the pipeline of your undergraduate degree, but if you're close, right, you might want to take a pic of that and take you to your application process. But here's the big idea, right? You'll need your official transcripts. You need a 2.7 GPA minimum, and then we have a handful of prerequisites. And so I just put prerequisites there because I don't know the prerequisites for the sport management program. And so you'll have to kind of do some searching on your own for that. The prerequisites for the exercise phys are probably ones you've all taken. In other words, they are anatomy and physiology, their exercise physiology, and their biomechanics. My sense is you guys have all taken those or will through your time here. So those are the only three prerequisites for us. And then what you may be most interested in, well, how much does this thing cost? And so the truth be told, undergraduate CBU is incredibly expensive. Right? It is outlandishly expensive. But the graduate, we try to price point the Cal States. And so as you kind of jump around, Cal State Fullerton's got a program, up north of a handful of Cal States have some as well. They're usually about this, somewhere in the ballpark of $25K or so. So I just put about $25K as of now, right? We get $723 per unit. Now, what do we know about tuition? It always goes up, right? And so by the time you get there, I don't know if it will exactly be 723, but it's been about, to encourage you, it's been about that for my 15 years. When I first started at CBU, it was about 20K for the degree. You can ask Cameron how much he paid. He might tell you, I don't remember exactly how much he paid. Hopefully he doesn't remember because it was just so good. But it's about that. And again, to further encourage you, my graduate degree was probably before you guys were born, and I paid about 20K. And so it hasn't just exponentially grown like so many other undergraduate programs have. And so all that to be said, that's kind of what we hope to have to pay. I don't think it'll be too much more, but you never know. And in addition, we have all sorts of ways to sort of offset this. And so the garden variety, FAFSA loans, grad loans are getting a handful of things. I don't know if you are a VA, but we have a robust VA program. Many of my current students are former military, and so I know that that's helpful in terms of offsetting the cost of it. There are, I encourage you to jump on that link, preferred partnerships. Many of our graduate students work for one of these companies and receive a pretty decent cut in terms of tuition. So again, that might interest you as well. All this is on our website, so don't feel like you've got to screen grab this, but just as you begin to dig around, you can find some ways to offset it. Another way, again, is through GA opportunities. So this is, I would argue, is probably the best way, because one, it helps you pay for school, but two, it keeps you sort of relevant into the job market. So you can work with us in the lab. You can see my name is there when we have a GA for our lab, but our rec center has GAs, our athletic office has GAs. Again, there are a handful of them. They usually, you can see this is kind of application season, right? Typically February, April's probably a little bit late, but this is kind of when they go live. And so we try again to help reduce the cost for our students as best we possibly can, in order to then make it more accessible. And so there's a healthy number of GA positions. Our rec center, the last time I counted, I think they had 4 different GAs, but it always just depends. It depends on how many they're retaining, how many people they need new, all those types of things. Timing is key in life, and so that's a part of it as well. But our lab has GAs, our athletic office has a continuous day. So there's ample opportunity there as well. All right, and then lastly, one of the things is the best pieces of information I can give you. So this is a QR code to this is our lab page. So this is the one and only website I have ever built, right? I'm not a digital native like you guys. So I built this webpage probably 10 years ago for folks like you, just people who are somewhat interested in our program to get maybe a better flavor or better perspective. And so if you take a picture of this and go through it, you can see all sorts of things in terms of the capabilities of our lab, the big machines and the toys that we have. You can see our personnel that are there, the research that they're doing. Again, all sorts of things. The piece that I would encourage you to look at most is our alumni page. Again, I think the best way to find sort of the flavor and the context of a program is to find where their alumni have landed. And the students who have gone before you with the same classes, the same professors, what have they done, right? And that will provide, as I said, a really unique flavor to each and every program. All of them are a little bit different, not better, not worse, but just different. And so the strength of our program is really found within alumni. Strength of all programs are found with alumni. And so you can again see, all right, where do they land? Is this something that interests me? So what I tell students is if you look at that alumni page and you can't identify and one of those jobs doesn't resonate with you, move on to try to find a different one. Right? It is of no benefit to me or no benefit for you to come to CBU and drop 25K only to end up in the exact same place you are today. Right? That doesn't help you and that doesn't help us. I tell our students when they go out and do great things, I would say, you are making us look so good, right? Thank you for making us look good, right? When our students go achieve these elite level positions, and so many of them have, then I say, thanks. But when a student doesn't do anything with it, it's really a knock on me as opposed to a knock on them. And so we need to be careful. So again, I would just encourage you just to spend some time jumping through the links that are there. But really, if you're interested in graduate work, double click, deep dive into that. All right, I think that's about the bulk that I wanted to get through. I don't just want to PowerPoint talk to you to death. I'd rather engage with you. And so how about this? How can I help? What are you thinking about? It doesn't have to be about CBU, but maybe just the field, maybe trends, maybe jobs. Again, I'm happy to help in any way they can. Go ahead.
Do you have any information on the PA programs you guys have there?
Yeah, so she has any information on the PA program. So CBU does have a graduate physician assistant program. They launched maybe 10 or so years ago, and it's wildly successful. And so it was interesting for me. I got roped into doing interviews. I was encouraged to sit on their interview cycle, and so they were allowed by their governing body, their recruiting body, to then double their cohort size. So it used to be a cohort of 30, and now it's a cohort of 60. So these 60 students that they ultimately would admit comes from a pool of about 1,500 applicants. So it's this massive application that's wildly popular. And I don't think that's especially unique to CBU. I think it's just a very popular field. And so I would sit on these interviews, they would do the screening, and then I would go to the PA offices, and it's a panel of 3 or 4 of us, and we would do group interviews. And they are some of the most impressive applicants I have ever seen, like wildly successful, really, really talented in what they did. But here's the trick. This is what I tell students. Very few of them could articulate anything. Right. And so really it's the personal skills. You need to have a really good GPA. You need to have great, what they call patient care experiences. You need to have clinical hours. But ultimately, to actually get a seat in the program, you got to be able to talk like a human being, right? Smile at me, look me in the eye, make me laugh, make me feel something, right? Something like that. But when we're just these robots, because we're off the charts brilliant, many of them didn't get into the program. So I'd encourage you to look at it. There are two actually people with kines backgrounds in their faculty, so they know our field well. One of them has a background in athletic training. Actually, she's the program director. And the other one comes from a biology background, the anatomy and physiology guys. It's a biology guy. So it's always good to reach out. They need to know you before you apply. So I'm happy to be the go-between there, but take some time to go out and tour their facility. Take some time to sit down with the program director, and then just know it's an incredibly competitive field. But I try to encourage students by saying that the competition is actually good, right? It means that there's healthy jobs on the other side of it. It means that it's a good paying job and there's plenty of opportunity. And that's why the competition is so fierce. So know that it is, highly competitive to get into, but use that as motivation. But does that help? I can talk more specifically, but is that kind of what you're after?
I think so.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Is it good? Yeah, it's a great program. Again, it's relatively new, but I've heard that they're well respected in their field. Again, and that's by evidence of the doubling of the cohort size. Yeah.
One question. Do you know what clinical hours they like more like medical assistant?
Yeah, they like a smattering, right? And so to work with peds, to work in sort of a community service like with homeless and with, they like the orthopedics. And so just kind of try to get your feet wet in a lot of different areas, both inpatient and outpatient centers with a diverse range of patients. And then, the superlatives, right? The international experience, the research that you've done, the this, the that, right? Just kind of round out there. But I don't think they necessarily care, other than they like to see a sort of a diverse range of hours. Good question. Good question. Other questions? Yes.
Do you know anything about CBU's PTA program?
Yeah, CBU's PTA program. So PTA is physical therapy assistant. And so one of the things that when I get in front of our undergraduate students in a class like this, I try to encourage them to major in kinesiology and PTA at the same time. So you get 2 degrees for the price of one, and then you're highly employable. So they don't always listen to me. As a matter of fact, they rarely listen to me. So here's what typically happens is my students will complete my program oftentimes, and then come back around and pick up the PTA. So the average age of a student in the PTA program is about 27. So that's not atypical, is a student will go through just sometimes a career, sometimes a degree, sometimes life, and then circle back and find PTA. So our PTA, it's you can do it in as short as 2 years. Like I said, our goal is to have them do 2-year degree PTA and then stay for a 4-year degree, but you don't have to have that. It's a really good career field. The jobs are there, the money is pretty good, and you can walk right out from their program, accreditation, and then begin to work immediately. As I said, many of my former students have come back around to it. It's the same price as a kines degree, so it's not a graduate degree cost, but it's done really, really well. So there are 3 faculty, 2 of them are DPTs, and then one of them is a PTA. The first year is basically clinical, and then, the first year is classroom, and then the second year is basically clinical. And so it's kind of a nice blend between some good course experience, but then it's also at the associates level. So it's not an in-depth study of anatomy and physiology and biomechanics. Much of it you'll kind of have had through your undergraduate degree, but then the sort of where the water hits the wheel is all of the clinical hours that you'll get through the program. Dr. Edmiston is the program director there. So I'd encourage you to reach out to her. Send an email to me, and I'm happy to connect you. But it's a great program. They're actually having applications. Spring is application. They start, I think, late summer, early fall. So does that help? I can talk more specifically, but
Yeah, no, that's
good. Yeah, it's a great program. The students that I keep up with, they're going to graduate from us and report back that they love it. So they have nothing but great things to say. These are good. Yes.
So you said that you guys are not accredited yet, but you're in the process. When exactly are you expected to be?
Yeah, so it's a long process. And so for specifically in SCA, we will submit our application. So they have a specific window where you submit. So we submit applications in the fall. And so this would be fall of 26. So the earliest that we would be accredited, I think it's between 2 and 3 year process. So it'd be 2028 or 2029. That's part of the reason why they've given until 2035 for students, for this not to impact students whatsoever, because it just takes so long for just the process to work its way. By the time you do a self-study, by the time they come out and visit, by the time it's years in the making. So we're trying to sort of get ahead of it where we will be accredited, we will be ready long before 2035. But yeah, to answer your question, we're probably 2 years out, 3 years out. Other questions? Remember anything I forgot? Anything I should, you want me to highlight? Talk more about?
How's the climate? CBU.
The climate in terms of what specific aspect?
Well, like the Riverside climate is pretty nice, but as a graduate student, because you guys aren't on the main campus, you have your own.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, Cameron always can tell you this from a student perspective. But yeah, we are across the street. We're on our, what we call a health science campus. And so we share space. It used to be with PA, they moved on. But speech pathology is there, athletic training, PTA, public health, nutrition, again, kind of your sort of garden variety, health science degrees are there. And so we're not far from the main campus. You can literally walk across the street and you're right. There's about 5 minutes from my office to the heart of main campus. But our classes, I guess I should say this, are always late afternoon, early evening. And so that will feel a little bit different compared to maybe your undergraduate experience. We've tried to set up the program in a way that students have the opportunity to work if they need to. If mom and dad were paying for things, probably they're not anymore, right, at the graduate level. So I would say, I've not looked at this empirically, but my sense is most all of our students work in some capacity. And so we say we leave the days open on purpose. And so you'll have the opportunity to sort of work during the day and then kind of late afternoon, early evening that they come to class. Our classes meet once per week and usually take between 2 and 3 classes at a time. So, you can see that you'd be busy 2 or 3 nights per week. So I think because of that, it to kind of Cameron's point, it feels a little bit different because it's not the hustle and bustle of sort of main campus in the morning when all students are there. It's kind of when campus is a little more quiet. Most of the undergrads are done by that point. By 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon, I don't see a lot of undergraduate students. And so then the campus, yeah, it might feel, I wouldn't say the word empty, but it would feel a little quieter. It is, I don't know. I like it because it gets a little quieter, gives me a chance to kind of think and do some work, but it would feel different than a typical undergraduate experience. We have opportunities for you to engage in research. Obviously, I've already mentioned internships and GA opportunities. And so typically our students are on campus for a good chunk of the day, even though their classes are only in the evening.
It's a pretty sweet deal to be able to have the day to work and then come to an evening class. One of the things me and Dr. Gillum bonded over was the fact that we had some children on the way.
We did, yeah.
So I was able to finish my master's degree because of the way they had the program set up. It really accommodated my schedule, made it much easier to kind of deal with things. I was literally writing one of my final papers in the hospital.
Yeah.
While going to grad school. So.
Yeah, and that's not too atypical. I mean, maybe the child on the way part, but yeah, like I said, most everybody is working at this point. Most everybody has to find a way to provide for themselves to pay the bills. And so our program tries to sort of accommodate you and be as flexible as we can. Like I said, 2, sometimes 3 classes per semester. So 2 to 3 evenings per week is kind of what you can count on. And they're usually about 2.5 to 3 hours long. I taught last night, I have an advanced physiology class. And so I think last night was 4 to 6:30. So to give you Monday nights, 4 to 6:30, that's what we meet. So it's pretty typical. Other questions? Go ahead.
I know you talked about exercise science and sports management.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have anything for the kinesiology PE coaching?
So it's a good question. I'm glad you asked. So we do. So to even split the hair even more, right? If you were to come to CBU, it's a master's of science in kinesiology. You could focus on exercise science, that's me, sport management, or we do have a pedagogy track. As I think, and because I don't live in this area, I think they're offloading the pedagogy track to then the College of Education, right? Because the way it was working was we worked already sort of hand in glove with College of Ed, that students would get their credential and then come to us for a handful of classes. I think it's going to still be the same, but we're offloading it to those guys as opposed to then us overseeing it. Does that kind of make sense? You would go through the College of Ed for the credential, and then you would take PE classes, pedagogy classes then with us, but the degree would be from College of Ed. Does that help? Yeah. So we have only a handful of students interested in that, so it's not a robust area of kind of. I was going to say the word revenue. That's probably not the best way of saying it, but there's not a whole lot of faculty that are in that area. But go ahead. Yes.
So it's not like you want to recommend coming to that college because it's not popular there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't. I think it could still be worth it, but I don't know that it would be. But it's not fair to say that this is our bread and butter. This is our sweet spot, right? That's not it. We have the program. There's to put a number on it, there's probably between 2 and 3 students per year in the program. So it doesn't get the lion's share of attention. I think you would be, pleased with the program, but that's not to say that, this is what we do and this is what we do well. Yeah. So there's probably other places that can maybe capture a bit more energy and a bit more of that field. Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. We're still trying to figure out exactly what to do with that. And those meetings are above my pay grade, as you can imagine. So, Dr. Ing, I saw your hand.
Yeah, so some of our students probably don't realize this, but us as in the positions that we're in, we have colleagues all around the country and.
Yeah.
And we go to these conferences every year.
Right.
And then they'll catch up with me and they go, hey, you're still at San Bernardino? I'm like, yeah. And then a few years later, you're still at San Bernardino?
Right.
Yeah, and then a few years later, you're still at San Bernardino? Because sometimes professors move around. They kind of find a job and they go, I'm gonna go somewhere else, I'm gonna go somewhere else, I'm gonna go somewhere else. But Dr. Gillum, you've been there for over 15 years.
Yep. You're 16.
So if something is pleasant for you, like it's probably like it there in some ways. Like, what are some things that you really enjoy about being in CBU?
Yeah, thanks. It's a really good question. Yeah, as you guys go from an undergraduate degree to a master's degree, and then if you choose to go PhD work, you kind of get a bit more of a peek behind the curtain, right, with each sort of turn of the ring, if you will. And so the truth is, with higher ed, it can be a hot mess. Is oftentimes the case. It can be filled with people who are incredibly bright and incredibly talented and incredibly petty. Right? When I was doing PhD work, my advisor didn't especially get along with the faculty across the hall, which means we didn't work in that lab for no other reason than they couldn't get along. And so it's like, you're brilliant and this person's brilliant. Why don't we do this? And we can't do that, right? Because it's turf wars and it's petty. And it's so to kind of answer Dr. Ng's question, use that as an example, just the collegiality of faculty, I think it's probably similar to the faculty that you guys have here at Cal State. People have landed here and they've stayed here. And it's the same thing with CBU. Very few people choose to move on from our faculty. And part of it is just the supportive nature. I attribute that honestly to really good leadership. Our president has been around, I think he's in year 32 or 33. So he's no doubt almost done. But I think his stability has really set the tone for the rest of our institution. My dean has been there almost 25 years. Our department chair just rotated out, and so he was the department chair for 20 years. And so again, when you have consistent, stable, healthy leadership, then it trickles down to small folks like me to just allow me to do sort of what I was trained to do, which is to do a little bit of research, do a little bit of teaching, but mostly to pour into you guys, to bring you along through the research process, to bring you along into the discipline, and it allows us to keep the main thing. As I said earlier, that really the heartbeat of our institution is students. Right? We're not interested in sort of these big fat grand dollars. I'm sure our institution is. If a different person up here would say that, like, no, Trevor, we are interested in that. Okay, fine. We're interested in that, right? But really, we're interested in you guys. And again, being a student-driven approach. And so I think that's done probably more than anything, done the most to kind of keep me here. Again, as you heard, I'm not from here. I don't really any connection here. This place is wild. And to you who've probably been born and raised, you don't know the waters in which you swim. But I live, I think, like 18 miles from here. It took me 45 minutes this morning. What are we doing, guys? I can ride my bike just about that fast, But I'll be remiss to say, yeah, CBU is a unique place. It's a special place. And I think a lot of it has to do with the leadership and the colleagues. And then no doubt the students. The students are, I enjoy each and every year, right? It keeps the discipline unique. It keeps the discipline sort of fresh. Because even though the topic is the same, the atmosphere of the classroom is different every time. And I'm so impressed with our students and not only what they are, not only what they do, but really the type of people they are. They're really high quality people. It's just a joy to be around them. Other questions? I don't know how long we got, Cameron?
10 minutes, and actually, I think I asked him to mention.
Yeah.
Your online program as well.
Yeah, so we have, so the sports administration is fully online. We do have an undergraduate degree that is completely online as well. So we're trying to figure out kind of how we do all this well in the landscape of higher education in 2026. And so, yeah, we try to have sort of a path for all people, try to be all things to all people. And so, yeah, if because of life and because of circumstances, you think online is the way to go, then again, we have, fully online graduate program and even a fully online undergraduate program, which again is much cheaper. The online, because the overhead is less, then the cost of it, tuition is less as well. So there's a handful of ways that you can complete both an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree at Cal Baptist. Anything else? Yes.
Can you talk about your athletic training program?
Yeah, good. So our athletic training program, all athletic training programs, I think, not that long ago, were required to be at the master's level. So our grad AT program started in the early 2000s. The line I got when I first landed at CBU in 2010 was they were the first athletic training program at the graduate level on the West Coast. So when I first landed at CBU, I would, just like I sat in on the PA interviews, I would sit in on the AT interviews. And they would have just tremendous applicants because they were sort of the only show in town. Now, as other graduate programs has popped up, The interest is a little bit less, but it's still a really, really solid program. I think it's a pretty big graduate program, as I understand athletic training. I think it's about 60 units, which again is not uncommon to CBU. It's just the discipline. And so they complete it in 2 years. And so it's again similar to the PTA, even similar to PA, in that it's a healthy number of coursework, but then a lot of didactic experience as you're then into the clinic. But I'm always so jealous of their alumni because as I walk down the hall, the athletic training faculty is about 3 doors down from me. And they just pin like Christmas cards and pictures that their alumni send back. And it's people like holding the Vince Lombardi trophy. It's people with a Larry O'Brien, which is the NBA. And like they just put their alumni in the highest echelon sport. They've got people with Golden State Warriors. They've got people with the Buffalo Bills. They've got people with, I think, the Giants, San Francisco Giants. But they're everywhere, right? The program's been around so long. And so they have students, like I said, all over collegiate athletics, professional athletics. And, you know, those are probably the one-off, but they get all the attention. But I think their bread and butter is just high school athletics. I think they have a lot of people within the high school system as well. So again, it's another thing like PTA. It's highly employable. You walk right out from the program. It's called the BOC, Board of Certification. You sit for the BOC, and then away you go. I don't quite understand the politics of all this, but what little I understand is California is one of the few states that doesn't require a certification or practice as an athletic trainer. And so I think sometimes that creates jobs in other areas more so than California. But they can kind of answer that in much greater detail. But I'll say their alum, their students find work in this area if they like, but that's usually at the college level, sometimes the high school level. But yeah, great program. They're primarily interested in kidney spokes, as you can imagine. It dovetails right from an undergraduate program then into grad. AT, heavy emphasis on anatomy physiology, and then heavy emphasis in TheraX, therapeutic exercise rehabilitation. So does that help? Do you have specific questions about it?
I'm not really just wanted to overview like.
Yeah, it's great. I think they're doing interviews right now. I bumped into them last week. And so they've just about filled their quota. I think they're accredited for 20 students. Don't quote me on that. Somewhere between 18 and probably 22 is I think the max that they can have. And so again, it's not quite the PA level of competition, but you need to be a good student to complete the program. And it's a lot of just kind of drinking information through a fire hose. They hit you with a lot of heavy anatomy and physiology in the summer, just to make sure you kind of know what's going on, so then you can apply it to other areas. But they are really good. They've got a well-trained faculty. They've been doing a good long while. So many of my students will have been moving into that program as well. So yeah, I hadn't mentioned that. Thanks for bringing that up. Good question. Anything else? We got a handful of minutes left. Anything else?
Okay.
No. Yeah. Well, again, look, thanks for being with you. Let me just encourage you. Have really good faculty. So you're in a good place. You're being trained well, and so get to know them, might sit under them. But yeah, Cal State's a special place. So I'm glad to be with you guys this morning and get to chat with you about CBU. Thanks to Cameron for bringing me out. It's always good. What was that guy's name?